What's going on, everyone? And welcome to another episode of Writing Friction. And as always, today's guest is pretty cool and a little different, and we're going to see what's going on. But I think I already like it. Everyone's hello to Tim Baltes. How are you, Tim?
Hey, man, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the pod.
Yeah, no, most definitely. We can hear it in your voice. Let the people know. Where are you from?
Oh, yeah, it's a quintessential Wisconsin accent there. I'm in the southeast corner of the state in Kenosha, which is like right in between Milwaukee and Chicago.
Most definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Chicago. I don't know if I've ever played a show in Milwaukee, though, on tour. I mean, I'll ask just, I guess, right off the bat for people who don't know, Tim is a fantastic drummer. And him and I came across via Instagram. I'll get into that a little bit. But growing up, as a musician, you're stuck between two pretty dope cities. Were you playing there growing up as a kid?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I started gigging out when I was 12, and by the time I got a license and a car, well, my mom, she didn't want me leaving the city, but I'd tell her I'm playing on the far north side of Kenosha, and I'd be in like Green Bay, or I'd be like I'm on the south side of town, and I'd be south of Chicago. So what are you gonna do? But hey, you know what? Thank God I'm still here and I'm still alive.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience as a kid being right here because there's so much to do musically, especially because it's very interesting. So you go south near Chicago, it's your quintessential big city music scene, right? Clubs and bars and
And a
basement
blues
venues.
even, specifically south side of Chicago.
It is, and funny enough, when I was a kid, I was 16, 17 in the mid 2000s, and so it was hot then was like hardcore music, metalcore, all that kind of stuff, and so that had a hopping scene there. But
Yeah.
what was really interesting is when you went far north into Wisconsin, in all these rural cities. Funny enough, they had huge death metal scenes because
What's that?
there's nothing else. There's nothing else for these kids to do,
Yeah.
so they're making music and having all their friends who don't play music come and watch them do this thing. So it was, we would have turnouts of, 50 to 100 people sometimes in Chicago, but then you'd go up north and you'd play to 400, 500 kids in a night. It was amazing, amazing.
You said like hardcore death metal, that kind of stuff. Was that the kind of music you were playing?
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I started out playing punk, and I played bass in bands. I didn't start playing drums till I was 15.
Yeah.
And that was when I started playing that sort of hardcore and metal stuff. And that took off till my early 20s. And then I refocused, and I've been focusing on kind of groove and like musical drumming ever since.
Were you doing any touring back then, or did you guys hit the road at all?
No, so I mean, we did the Weekend Warrior thing
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure, but more than anything, it was interesting because so at the end of high school, two different bands asked me to tour, and I had to turn it down. I went to college, and I never got that opportunity. I still haven't toured. The beautiful thing is that through the internet and this sort of presence I built on Instagram, is I've been able to really connect with a lot of people, whether they were friends who continued to tour while I went to college,
Yeah.
or people I admired, or just general people who are working musicians now. And so even though I haven't toured, I've had some amazing tour-like experiences. One of my best friends is Joe Cox, who is the drum tech for Catfish and the Bottlemen,
Okay. Yeah.
this rock band. And like for example, they were in Chicago one time, and he hit me up a few weeks beforehand. He said, "Hey, we picked up a date opening for Green Day in Chicago. Do you want to come and hang out? I'll
Okay.
get a two-bed hotel room." And so I literally got to stay in the hotel with my buddies. And then we got to explore. We had all access to Wrigley Field. So they're British. So
Oh
they
wow,
would,
was that Wrigley?
so,
Hell yeah.
yeah. So these guys are British, so they don't know what the heck anything is. I'm like, all right, Joe, we got to go touch the ivy at the end of the field. We're gonna sit dead center, first row behind home plate, just to say we've done it. You
Yeah.
can run around the whole place. it was just, to have those kind of experiences despite not actually touring. I get all the best parts of touring, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, I was the touring musician who was the dude in the van. Again, the reason we're talking is the drummer from that band, one of the best drummers that I know in the Bay Area, my buddy Blake Ritterman. Again, he's the one who introduced us. But I was touring with him, and it was the kind of thing, we were pulling up to fucking Helena, Montana on a Tuesday night to play in front of 4 people, 3 of them being the other band, so I did that. But through all that, again, it's how you meet people in this life. You never know what's going to happen. And I've had instances, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, where buddies of mine have brought me around big venues. And they show you like the secret rooms, where people actually really get high and shit like that. And and it's like, it's a blast, man. The rock and roll spectrum is just, it's so wide. But since it's so wide, I kind of want to narrow it back down to you. And I have some questions I kind of wanted to ask you. Being this, I guess the presence on Instagram being, pretty strong, it seems like you kind of created a niche thing in what it is that you're trying to do. Maybe you could explain it a little bit better, but to the casual observant like myself, you just posted a System of a Down video, so it's like you have the technical skill of playing all these songs, and then you'll post a video of you're eating, I think, like Drake's cakes and things like that. So how did this all come about? I mean, is that just your personality coming out on camera?
So slowly, that's exactly what it was. So I actually had a corporate career for a while in copywriting. And so, having this background in business writing, I think really kind of allowed me to better understand.
You are a writer.
I am a writer. I am a writer. So, I better understand how to brand. I better understand how to find my audience, what they look like, and how to better draw them in. And so it's really just been an experiment in building a brand. And part of that for me, I've talked about this on other podcasts and in my consulting work now, and that's the importance of authenticity. So as an example, really on the most basic level, when we think about drummers like Fred Armisen, who, here's a guy who he did SNL for years. He literally did a stand-up special called Stand Up for Drummers. And people view him, I like to think, as the funny guy who plays drums. And I would rather view myself in a more serious light with the drumming. So I try to brand myself at its most basic level as the drummer who is also funny. Mm-hmm. And so always that music is going to be the focus. I post videos where I focus on both my playing and then the production I have in my little recording space. And then at night, usually I have videos that are, they're still popular, but they're nearly as popular as the drumming videos.
Sorry, not to cut you off. You're paying attention to these metrics. You're saying you're seeing what's popular, and you're going to be curating things to that.
100%. And so, even with the drumming stuff, on the drumming level, it's more mainstream appeal is generally going to have better results. So, like I posted a Van Halen cover the other day. Sometimes I'll post System of a Down, but I'll also try to open people's minds to these other bands. I just did a couple covers of bands you probably never heard of, like Kid Crash, which is this sort of weird emo-y math rock post-hardcore thing that's like super weird and good. And then I did another cover of a guy who lived in Kenosha, and he's like a flavor scientist now. His name's Pete Davis, and he has a math rock band called Invalids. So this is the sort of content that sometime I'll shuffle into the mix. But it's having mainstream appeal on that level. And part of me trying to do this comedy stuff, whether it's comedy on drums or sitting on the drum set and like reviewing foods like those Drake cakes, it's another part of my personality. I've always been, this sort of boisterous, funny guy, whether it's at parties or at shows or whatever. And so that's kind of showcasing that part of me to the public. It's not as popular yet, but the whole goal of having this other layer where it's 2 videos a day, generally 2 videos a day, drums in the morning, funny at night, is that I'm hoping to have some more appeal to just general people. And it happens. There are couples who share my funny videos at night. And there are whole families. There's a family out near Seattle, Washington, 6 kids and a pair of parents, and they all watch my silly videos together and sing the little songs and this sort of thing to each other, or use the catch lines. Mark Juliana, he's a drummer. He played on David Bowie's last record, playing with St. Vincent right now. Has sent me videos of his son, like just like screaming some of the words.
And that's what it is, right? I mean, literally one day you can wake up and, the shortstop from the Chicago Cubs can hear your video and share it. And then boom, the next thing so that's kind of the world we're living in. But it's dope that you're breaking it down and people can hear this, because again, I mean, in the world of the internet, there's so much fucking shit. Everyone's got a podcast, everyone's got a thing, everyone's doing this, and they all want you to know about it. But again, you kind of seem like the dude who's just kind of like, I'm going to do my thing. If you guys are into it, you're going to be into it. But you're good at it. And that's what people need to realize. You're not fucking around. You're putting time and energy into this stuff.
100%. I've been studying comedy since I was a kid. I was the kid who was growing up watching Ace Ventura, trying to talk out of my butt, and then I got my first drum set when I was 3. I kind of set it aside, started piano at 8, bass at 12, guitar at about 12, 13, and then drums finally again seriously at 15. I've been playing now full-time drums for 16 years. I'm 31 now. And so, I just had a DM the other day. Someone said, it's so funny. You still get these questions as a grown dude, and you're like, someone says, how are you so good at drums? And it's like, man, I still shed, when I'm, doing well, I'm shedding an hour to 3 hours a day still. And I think it's necessary with whatever you're trying to do, whether it's the comedy stuff, if it's the funny video editing, if it's the mixing of drums, playing drums, whatever you do, it just comes down to practice, putting in the hours, I think.
Do you get a lot of feedback about technical stuff? I mean, I'm assuming you got a lot of drum heads in there, people commenting on your gear, even how you record. I mean, how do you record all this stuff? What kind of software do you use?
Sure. I get those questions all the time, and I tend not to focus on the gear. I try to put so much of it back on the player, because I come from this kind of DIY punk thing.
Yeah.
So, as much as I'm into the gear and I know the gear and I know what works for me, I don't necessarily talk about it a lot. Part of that too is because the drumming language that I use, I teach, and one of my main lessons, a lot of people come for a one-off lesson on how do you build your fills, these sort of quick, really fast, intricate parts between the drum beats. And I actually use writing language in that. So I'm like, well, we take, these syllables and turn them into words, syllables being, 3 to 4 note patterns that I'm playing with my hands. I'm going to turn those into words where we string these syllables together. Eventually we're creating sentences, and now we have these well-formed paragraphs. So even there, it's like bringing this writing element in. And so it's not thinking about these things in traditional ways. It's not thinking about, well, if I have such and such pieces of gear, then I know I'm going to sound good. Well, let's try to make whatever the heck you got sound good. I do try to use easy things that make my workflow quicker, more efficient, and just easier on me. So I'm all Mac. I run Logic for my recording software. I do, yeah. And then I use Universal Audio Apollo interfaces, which basically they're very expensive, incredibly expensive. But now I have this much gear that takes I could take up a whole room with the same set of gear if I turned all this stuff into hardware versus just having these two little units here. They sound great. There's so much versatility in the types of sounds I'm able to get out of it, and that's what it is for me. I want efficiency and ease of use. Those are two biggest things that I try to get out of my gear.
Yeah. Well, now my brain is just swirling with questions, but one of the videos I saw you post recently, or one of the videos I came across, is you were at a music store. Are you kind of local? I mean, people are aware of you in the town and things like that, and what you're kind of building? And I mean, are you walking to the drum shop and be like, hey, I'm going to set up some shit, let's do this? Or
So actually that relationship started because getting through college, my undergrad, I actually worked in a music store for 5 years.
Yeah,
so
I still want to. Yeah.
It's and I still have a great relationship with the owners and most of the employees
there.
They are, yeah. It's a great thing, both of them. I there's one here in town in Kenosha, the one that I work at, and then in the same system, same owners, there's one in Southwest Milwaukee in a town called Greenfield, and I filmed at both of them. Last year, I filmed a lot at both of them, and it's great guys, great set of guys and gals, and I've just been so fortunate to maintain that relationship. So, but as far as being known around town, what's still so interesting is like I can go to these shops and no one besides the guys I know, I don't really get recognized that much. It's when I go to the bigger cities. If I go to, the first time I went to Portland, Oregon, I stopped in Revival Drum Shop, and one guy who was from Portland immediately recognized me, and another guy who was just happened to be vacationing there from Kansas City, Missouri, freaking recognized me and knew who I was. So, there's it's very interesting when you become this sort of like niche micro celebrity.
Very niche.
Very niche, super niche micro celebrity. I think it is, I think some people like to go wide. I tend to like to go deep. And so for me, it is about developing this voice in the community as sort of the reprieve from the regular, you go on drum Instagram and it's literally so many guys are just out there playing these really fast technical things, and they have a super straight face on, and here I am, like screaming into the camera and joking and throwing gear as at this sort of stupid stuff to say that, hey, it's okay that we don't have to be serious all the time, or just grooving, playing the groove over a Sheryl Crow song to show that, like, hey, we don't have to play the super technical stuff all the time. The super simple stuff has always worked musically. And you know what? It sounds great. And it's hard to do too.
It's hard to do well, right?
Yes. Yes.
Anyone theoretically can write a Neil Young song, and I could play a G, C, D progression. But if I give that guitar to Neil Young, it's going to be different, Yes. I want to go back to, you kind of blew my mind. I want to go get a little more technical. When you were talking about your drum fills and how you were saying you give it a language and you add syllables and things like that. And I've always, I've been a guitar player my whole life, and guitarists always want to be drummers. That's always the thing, right? We always want to get behind a drum set and just beat the shit out. But none of us know what we're doing. But with music and guitar and bass and piano, we actually have these things called notes, right? That have letters, and they're, how they work, and we won't get into that, but there's a map in musicians' minds that we can work with. Drummers have notes, right? But they're obviously tempo notes. Did you was that something that was taught to you? Did you kind of come up with that idea? Is that a common thing in drummers to think in syllables when it comes to drum? I've never heard of that before.
No, not at all. And so the theory that I put around it is not traditional music theory. Traditional music theory, as it relates to drums, is they do have syllables. They call them rudiments. Mm-hmm. And I use some of these traditional rudiments, which is basically just some sort of mixture between single hits and double hits with the right or left hand. I don't tend to use that language. I've used these different pieces of different rudiments to create my own sort of language around them. But more than anything, the way that I've developed this is just listening to music forever and playing music forever. Even when I was 12, 13 years old, it wasn't that we were necessarily playing covers. When I was playing guitar in a band, yeah, we were playing covers there and writing little songs. But when I was playing bass in this band, we had this older kid in the band who played guitar with us, and he would say, "All right, Tim, I was playing bass." He said, "Use your bass and provide something. Just play a riff." And I'm 12 years old. Like, I don't know what the heck to do. Yeah. And I had to figure it out on the spot. So from that point forward, it was that I had to invent a way to play. I invented a way to play on bass that sounded, in my opinion, far beyond what a 12-year-old might be doing on bass with the means that I had. And that was kind of what I took to drumming. I've taken 5, maybe 6 drum lessons in the 15 years I've been playing, and most of those have simply focused on how do you hold a stick and how do you throw a stick so that you can play for a long time without hurting yourself. It's almost never focused on what are the different patterns that someone uses, how do I sound like this guy or that guy. I figure that out on my own and turn it into my own thing beyond that.
Yeah, that reminds me immediately of I don't know if you're a big Rolling Stones fan, but Keith in his book talked about how he pretty much learned to kind of how to play the guitar to how Charlie Watts played the drums, because Charlie Watt plays, he has this kind of I can't describe it, but it's like this back drag right on the hi-hat that he does.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, he does that
yeah,
weird thing. Yeah.
and Keith talks about how he pretty much had to learn how to play guitar differently to match Charlie Watts' style of drum playing.
That's really interesting you bring that up. I'm a big Stones
Yeah.
fan, and it's that's one of my favorite experiences in life. A good friend of mine, John Perrin, he plays with a legacy act called NRBQ. He also plays with the Beatle band that George Harrison's sister puts together.
What's that
So
called?
he's oh gosh, now you're
I didn't even know he had a
testing me.
sister.
Yeah. I forget what the name of the band is. Something like Liverpool Legends, I think maybe. I think that
George
might be the
Harrison's
one.
sister's band.
Yeah, George Harrison's sister's band. And so he's done a lot of things, and he's made a lot of friends, and one of those friends is the drum tech for the Stones. So
Oh, wow.
in mid 2019, I got invited to go see the Stones with him, and we got to go up on stage. I touched Keith's amp, and got to see Charlie's kit and everything. But seeing them perform live, I mean, how long have they been playing together now? 60 freaking years, like having to play with someone for that long, even though these guys are old as can be. It's amazing how particularly Keith and Charlie still click so tight.
I mean, that's the band.
It is.
It's the band. I mean, I saw the Stones one time, Giants, the old Giant Stadium in Jersey, 2000 shit, either 4 or 6. So, and I mean, I've seen Fish over 100 times. I've been to a lot of concerts. Top 5 in every aspect you could ever have ever in a concert. I mean, no one's ever. They are the greatest rock and roll band of all time. I mean, for people to say otherwise, I don't know how you can at this point. If you taste aside of the music, I mean, they've been doing it for 60 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Mick Jagger works out 4 times a day at this point. It's true. Yeah, no, he's
insane.
Well, speaking of Instagram, he's got a savage Instagram account. I mean, every
I'll
day.
have to look that up. I've never seen that.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, well, he's what, almost 80 years old, and he still runs around the stage.
Man.
It's crazy. So your website also kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but your website also mentions that you also do, remote work, obviously studio work, but you also do some film work too. Yeah.
So all the work that I've done is, it's basically, I worked with an audio company called Moonwalk Audio for years. A guy named Adam Gubman. Adam works with everyone from video game companies to TV and even film too. So I've been he is one of the top video game music producers in the world, and very, very, very talented guy. And we started working together in 2016. And I think he asked me, "Hey man, have you ever done remote session work?" And I said, "Yeah, I've done that." I lied through my teeth, man, but I knew I was ready, and I just hoping someone would give me a shot.
Okay.
And he did, and I did the soundtrack to a Wicked, the Wizard of Oz play, slot machine.
Okay. Oh, cool.
So it started there. That was successful. So
I'm sorry, a physical like Vegas slot machine?
Yeah. As far as my understanding, there are wicked slot machines out there with my freaking drumming on them. And then after that was video game soundtracks. So a lot of like Zynga, which are the Farmville people, and independent
SF,
games.
Yeah, they're SF.
Yeah. So there's that, and then that turned into like TV stuff. So like Fox specials. There was I worked on the pre-pro for the Christmas, and they turned the Christmas Story into a live musical. One of my favorite movies ever. So that was super cool. I've done Charlie Brown sanctioned video games where the Schultz family had to like approve our music. Insane. And then the biggest stuff. I did Disney shows. There were soundtracks to 3 Disney shows, 2 at the Japan park, and I think 1 or 2 at on the cruise line. And then I also worked on the pre-pro for, well, I did background music, I think, in the Baywatch movie. And then I worked on the pre-pro for that song that went on to win the Grammy from The Greatest Showman. So like all that from this one relationship, which was amazing. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to do that.
Is that something you'd like to do more of?
It's I'm really thankful I had that experience. When you get to the higher level stuff, the Fox and the Disney,
Yeah.
the money gets exponentially better, which is nice. But it was never a full-time living for me. I was still in 50, 60 hours a week at my corporate gig. The whole time I was doing my most, I guess you could say, prolific work in that sense. Now moving forward, I've actually been in talks with several different drum industry companies about working full time, marketing, copywriting, that sort of thing. And I'm hoping something really big is going to be coming out in the next few weeks here about that. And beyond that, if that doesn't work out, I'm still, even if this does work out, and if it doesn't work out either way, I'm going to be continuing to push the education route. I think I have a lot to offer, whether it's playing wise or recording or understanding how to build a little social media thing. And so that's going to be the focus. When I was originally going to college, I was going to college to be an English teacher.
Oh, okay.
And the only reason I'm not is because the governor at the time gutted all of our labor unions for teachers. So I was like, well, I'm not going to make any money doing this, and they're going to work me to my bone. So I figure that's why I went into copywriting. But now, education, man, it's always been a passion of mine, and I feel like I've got the audience that could at least, if I got 26,000 freaking people on Instagram, if I can get 40 or 60 of them to sign up for weekly lessons, I'm a happy camp.
So do you know who Bob Lefsetz is?
Not offhand, no.
Bob Lefsetz writes a thing called the Lefsetz Letter. It's a music industry letter he's been writing since 1986. He's a fucking big to do. He was on the podcast. He's an old curmudgeon guy. He's great. I mean, he literally knows everyone. But one of his big things is he always talks about it. And I've always thought about this too. And the band Dr. Dog?
Yeah.
This is what I think about this band is like, the idea, it's a numbers game. If you can get 1,000 fans who are willing to spend $100 a year on you, that's 100,000, right? So like that's pure simple math. It seems like that's kind of what you're talking about. If you can get X amount to do this because you're giving out that, why not do it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's totally a numbers game. And what's so beautiful is that with the advent of social media, you have, like in the drum world, at the bottom, you could think about teaching and education. You could think about entities like people who are teaching at School of Rock. Here you're making $15, maybe $20 an hour teaching. And then at the very, very top, now you have entities like Drumeo. Drumeo is a great example, which is this platform online. You pay a fee and you get access behind a paywall to watch all these drum education videos through the year. And then there's this interesting middle. So like at the top of the middle, you have educators like Mike Johnston, who does like a Drumeo model. So here's who's posting all these videos online, but then he adds camps and all this, but it's like a one-man show. It's him and his wife doing the whole thing. And then there's, the rest of us, like Mark Juliana, another good example, David Bowie's drummer, through Patreon and lessons, this guy's making a whole living now, and he can gig when he wants to gig, and he doesn't have to gig when he doesn't want to gig. And so it creates this freedom, I think, that is it's really powerful for all of us, whether there's a pandemic or not, especially during the pandemic, though.
Are drummers utilizing Patreon?
Yes, the two big ones I'm aware of are Dan Weiss and Mark Juliana, who are basically, you could think of them as sort of the quintessential music school jazz types of dudes. Okay. There are entities then like there's a company called Sounds Like a Drum, which is a very interesting educational platform that a couple guys I know are doing, and they've been doing well with Patreon. And what's nice about Patreon is, if you have a YouTube platform for long form content plus the Patreon, now between the YouTube ad revenue, and partnership revenue, and the Patreon, now you're really able to do some damage,
Yeah.
which is it's so
Especially,
interesting, how all of these things have shifted education, teaching, and entertainment in the drum industry, particularly in the last 5-ish years. It's insane.
yeah, I mean, it's especially to go back to the Patreon thing. I mean, there are people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on Patreon.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's great because, not to, suck off Patreon, but it's cool because, you can do the tiers, right? You can do the $5 tier, the $10 tier, the $20 tier. And, I know some people don't like to talk about money, but at the end of the day, you got to buy that sweatshirt you're wearing.
that's right. Yeah.
And it's what it is. And if you're stoked on the product you're putting out there, I think people will be stoked to spend the money on that product. It's really kind of what it comes down to.
100%. I've been selling, one of the things I've been selling for a few years now are drumless practice tracks. So basically, it's like a music bed that, instead of like playing to a metronome where you do this click going and going, it gets boring after about 5 minutes. Now you have a music bed, which is more complicated because you're trying to play around musical melodies and rhythms, and trying to craft a drum part that really fits appropriately. And the beautiful thing about the way that I've structured that is it's almost in the same way that Patreon is. You can pay whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people. I put a $0 price tag on this thing.
Yeah.
And you can pay zero. There's plenty of people who pay $1, $5, $5 a volume. Sometimes 10, or a lot of people who pay $10 or $20 a volume. And then there are some people who are generous enough to donate, $50, $100 for some of these packs. And what I like about structuring it that way is it's not necessarily about you buying the product, but it's simply then about how much do you want to support this person who's doing something that you like.
Yes.
Do you like it enough to pay $1? Do you like it enough to pay 5, 10, 50, 100? You can pay whatever you feel comfortable paying, and at the end of the day, that money is going to keep me doing the things that I love, that they love too.
It's the definition of capitalism, Tim. That's what it is. And on that note, I think we should probably end it there. Dude, this has been a blast, man. I always kind of ask a couple of questions at the end of this. You're not a writer per se, but you can still give out some shout outs. Usually I ask where do people buy their books from, but where do you buy your music from? What were the shops we were talking about before? You never named them.
Oh, so as far as music, the music gear shops. Yeah. Music Go Round in Kenosha, Greenfield, great shops if you're ever looking for used gear. If you're looking to support me, there's a link to my drumless tracks on my Instagram, which is Timbo from Keno, Timbo Fromkeno. I'm always posting content and funny content on there. There's something for everyone. So if anyone wants to check that out, I appreciate it. That's the main thing. You'll probably see me on YouTube sooner than later. I have a couple dead channels there now if you want to see some really bad content. And other than that, I guess, yeah, that closes it out.
You're going to be, I'm sorry, you're re-upping the YouTube page or putting it back?
Eventually, yeah, I'm going to be looking to get back into long form content as the advent of my education stuff comes to fruition. So that'll be coming in the near future for sure.
Tim, what a blast, man. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to
me. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, man. This was really nice.
Not a doubt. Yeah. Now, when I'm coming through Wisconsin, I'll make sure we'll link up.
Yeah, dude. Cheese rots.
I'm into it. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Peace.